everybody, it's Lee. Welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Today we're teaming up with the Rink Live and their youth hockey reporter, Sydney Wolf. It's a great interview about not only how she got into the journalistic side of hockey, but youth hockey as a whole from that point of view. And she gives some great perspectives as a Minnesotan, but also as someone who doesn't necessarily have a kid in the game. So she sees the game from a totally different perspective. It's a great conversation. Also, if you're watching this, if you're listening, you're not going to see this, but if you're watching this, you'll see behind me, got some new swag here from Our Kids Play Hockey, a brand new sign sent to us by ultimatehockeyfans.com. They make custom, pretty amazing light fixtures, board fixtures like that. I would check them out. Just even if you've already done all your Christmas and Hanukkah shopping, it's amazing. They can put you or your kid on something like this. They are not paying me to say that. I am really flattered by the gift, and I wanted to share it with all of you. You can also go check them out if you go to ourkidsplayhockey.com on our discounts kind of holiday gift page, which we're going to keep up year round, I think. You can get direct links to this stuff as well. And again, if you're listening, just check it out. I'm telling you, this is high quality and pretty amazing looking. Sitting behind me, it's just our logo gigantic within the locker room. So anyway, thank you so much for listening to that. And these every week. We do appreciate it. But without further ado, here's Sydney Wolf of the Rink Live on Our Kids Play Hockey. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, and I'm joined by two people that I would gladly get into a bench-clearing brawl with any day of the week, Christy Casciano-Burns and Mike Benelli. And joining us today is another person who has dedicated their professional life to the game we all love so much. She hails from Minnesota and graduated with her bachelor's from St. Cloud State with a heavy focus in broadcast journalism, something that the three of us obviously love and can relate to. She has been a youth hockey reporter for the Rink Live since 2021 and is constantly on the road, experiencing hockey events and attending games from the youth to the pro level while interviewing players and coaches along the way. Simply put, she's around the game about as much as we are, if not more. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sydney Wolf to the show today. Sydney, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Excited to talk about all things hockey related.
Well, and we know you can carry a conversation about all things hockey related. So I thought a lot about how I want to start this episode because I'm sure you see a lot of things. So I said, you know what? It's the holidays. Let's start it on a positive note. Okay. You see a lot of youth hockey. Tell me some of the triumphs and the wonderful things that you see on a daily basis that you love.
I mean, I just love going out to youth hockey games. I go to a lot of tournaments, especially last winter and into the spring. I did a lot of youth hockey tournaments. That's what originally when I got started for the Rink Live, they wanted me to go out and cover a bunch of youth hockey tournaments all over, mostly Minnesota, some Fargo, drove up to North Dakota a little bit, but I just love getting out there and talking to kids after they win games is always so fun. Seeing people win big goals is always so exciting and youth hockey. And I feel like just the connections I've made in youth hockey, meeting different parents, meeting all the players, the coaches, everybody's been so great. I feel like just the world of hockey, everybody's been super nice and loves to talk about hockey and their kids and their teams and how they're doing. So just everybody's been super welcoming, I feel like, in the world of hockey. And it's always fun to see kids get their start at the youth level and then see them evolve over time and eventually make it onto better and better teams and do bigger and better things.
And you're really filling a need. I mean, have you found that, there's been a big gap as far as coverage of youth hockey, and you're filling that need, right?
Yeah, I mean, there isn't a ton of people that cover just youth hockey. I mean, I cover a lot of different things too, because obviously there's a lot of hockey to be covered, a lot of different leagues and a lot of different areas, especially in Minnesota where we have so much. But yeah, there's not a ton of people doing youth hockey. There's some, Twitter accounts, social media accounts that do youth hockey, but there's not a ton. If you look up stuff, and I've done a lot of youth hockey highlights. We've been doing a lot on TikTok recently for the Rink Live. So trying to get people scoring goals or just interesting clips of that kind of stuff is really fun to cover youth hockey. And I feel like it's starting to grow and you're starting to see more and more of that stuff, especially in Minnesota and in the Midwest.
So one of the reasons, go ahead, Mike, my bad.
No, I was just going to ask about, because just on staying on that topic of, you're in the rink and you're interviewing kids and I'm sure parents and coaches and things like that. Have you found, and you mentioned a couple of social media sites. I mean, are you finding that players are responding to you like based off of their own followers or their own, knowing that, it's a good way for them to kind of build their brand at 9 years old? you know, that are parents
Oh,
seeking you out in the rinks and saying, hey, you got to get my son or daughter on. She's got a great, you know, she's got 800 followers on Instagram, and be a great interview.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at first nobody really knew when I first got hired for the Rink Live doing youth hockey stuff. We weren't super like people didn't weren't super familiar with us out at the rinks yet, but now I feel like we've definitely built up a lot of our youth hockey coverage over the past year, and a lot more people know me too when I go out to rinks now compared to when I first started. Nobody really knew who I was when I was going out to rinks, and now people definitely want to be on our TikTok page. We have a lot of kids that really are like, "Oh, I want to see me or my teammate on the TikTok, scoring a big goal or something interesting." So I feel like that's been a big thing for us, or our Instagram too. I take a lot of pictures. Kids loved being tagged in the pictures and then resharing them on their Instagram stories and stuff like that. So it's been fun to see kids interact with the content on social media. I feel like that's been a big thing over the past year too, is just getting people excited about content on things like obviously Twitter, but I feel like a lot of kids don't have Twitter. That's more parents. That's more of a
Right.
parent thing.
Aging out.
Yeah, and then Instagram definitely has a lot of kids, and especially TikTok too.
You know what? One of the reasons we love the Rink Live, Sydney, is because there's that clear commitment to kind of going beyond the gotcha moment or the hot topic headline that's just going to get you to click. And the fact that they've brought you on really full time to do this, I think it says a lot about them. The other thing that I love about the position you're in is that you're going to naturally just bring a different perspective to your reporting. And what I mean by that is this: we talk about this, Christy and Mike, all the time. When you're a hockey parent, you're watching your kid. There's a heavy focus on your kid. It's totally understandable, right? But when you go to the games and there's not one of your kids out there, you're seeing the enjoyment, you're seeing the smiles, you're seeing the fun, you're seeing the goals. And that's something that, a lot of us talk about, I think, in remembrance sometimes, like, oh, when I was a kid, it was just wonderful. And you're kind of reporting that back now, right? That youth hockey still is youth hockey. It's in spite of all of the, issues, we'll just say, that come across. But I love that you're able to bring that perspective. I think it's important to bring that perspective because hockey parents can sometimes be a little crazy. And we talked about this before the episode. Our audience, I think, loves that we report on that. But that's going to turn this too. So we talked about the good stuff. I don't want to dive too deep into negative, but what's some of the bad stuff or the toxic stuff that you see? Or is that not really a big thing that you see out there? Is that more just kind of smoke and mirrors?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it hasn't been as much as when I first started this job. I feel like there were a lot of people that told me, "Oh, you're going to run into so many crazy hockey parents that are yelling and upset and they want you to, only cover their kid all the time." But I feel like it's pretty rare I run into really intense parents or really,
Right.
mean parents or anything. It's very rare I see those nowadays. I get a lot of passionate parents, but not necessarily in a bad way. Obviously, there's a good way to be passionate about your kids' games too. So I feel
Right.
like those have been, pretty few and far between. And when there's one, pretty upset parent or something more on the negative side, I feel like they're usually sitting by themselves, and it seems like not a ton of people want to associate with them nowadays. So that's kind of nice to see, because I had so many people warn me like that was going to be a big issue, and I feel like that actually hasn't. I'd say really the only negative thing sometimes is when we're covering girls hockey. I try and cover girls hockey a lot, or just as much as I cover the boys side of things. Sometimes on social media, you get boys who comment about girls being like, "Oh, well, they can't play or they're not good." And I always try and monitor the comments and delete anything that's just being negative or annoying, because I obviously want to grow the girls game and support them, because they also have tons of awesome players. So that can be a little interesting sometimes, is just monitoring social media comments at times. It's usually on TikTok, but I think that's just part of the social media thing of people think they can
Right.
go out and say whatever they want sometimes, which can get a little, I don't know, negative. But I usually try and monitor comments and delete any ones that are just unnecessarily negative, because we're not about that on the Rink Live. We just want to share good clips of stuff and all that. But otherwise, I feel like there hasn't really been too many negatives, which is good. That's been
That's
a
refreshing.
positive thing. Yeah, refreshing
Yeah.
to see.
But I think it also shows that while there are some toxic moments in youth hockey, um, I think there is really more a silent majority of parents that are really trying to do this the right way. I think we just hear a lot about the really bad
Yeah,
moments that happen across
they
the
get a
world.
lot of media. Yeah.
Right. I personally have a problem with that because to me, and this is more of a journalistic approach, Christy, I'd love your thoughts on this too. I just wish it was a little bit more balanced. If you're going to share a story of a hockey mom banging a ref on the head, share a story about a kid who did something triumphant, to help his local charity. I mean, the more we flood the market with good stories, I think the more we'll get out of this gotcha era of broadcasting, which really needs to end. But that's another topic for another show.
Yeah, I think Sydney's in that way in the world. I mean, just like her fellow Minnesotan there that we've had Tom Korski on in the past, just about, really thinking about social media and, maybe, and we've talked about this, Sydney, on our end. And I think, you guys have a lot of responsibility too with that you're educating those kids, right? You're saying, hey, listen, okay, that's a pretty bad comment, but, in 5 years, some college coach is going to be looking at your TikTok account and saying, I can't believe this young man didn't understand, what they were saying. I don't care if they're 13, 14, 15, I think.
Yeah.
And then also for our parents, right? If you have a 10-year-old on TikTok, maybe you should see what they're writing. I don't know, but
Absolutely.
I think it's just a matter of, it is a great, so the negatives are there, but the positives are, it's a great teaching moment and a great opportunity to show, how much good stuff there is. And I would agree, Sydney. I mean, I'm probably in the world of the rinks every day looking and going, okay, well, where is the crazy hockey parent? And there aren't that many. The problem is it's the one that gets focused on, and then a lot of us stand by and allow it to happen. So I think that the fact that you're out there and promoting all the good stuff that's happening and all the good kids and all the good plays and all the fun aspects of the game, that's really most of us. That's the mass majority of the kids in our hockey world, I guess.
Yeah.
So I love it. I guess start asking more questions. I always have comments. I've been noticing that
You
more.
got a lot to
I have
say,
a
Mike.
question.
Go ahead, sorry.
Parents are just joining us, and on the East Coast, we're not that familiar with Rink Live. If you could tell us what it is, how you're trying to grow it, and how you became involved, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally normal for East Coast people to not have heard of us. We mostly cover the Midwest, a huge focus on Minnesota because we have so much hockey here, but we're slowly growing to just be more of the Midwest and more of just prospects, high school, college, all that stuff. We cover a lot of different levels of hockey. I specifically do a lot of the youth stuff. We've been talking about youth hockey, specifically Minnesota, North Dakota, mostly, but also cover a lot of high school hockey here because that's huge in Minnesota. It's always a big topic. Prospects, whenever players commit to Division I programs, we've had a couple of kids commit to programs out east, so we'll talk about those. So if you have any East Coast college fans, we might have some stories about prospects up on our website, but writing stories about their story or their hockey career, stories about the junior level, the NAL, the USHL, all that good stuff, plenty of college, just kind of a little bit of everything on our site, honestly. And yeah, we've really expanded our coverage over the past year to include just a ton of different things. I was sort of part of the beginning of that expansion, I guess you could say. I joined the Rink Live over a year ago now, actually. Kind of crazy to think about. It was November of last year, and they were bringing on some new people to try and just fill in some of the gaps that they had, I guess you could say. There's just so many areas of hockey. You could honestly hire a person to cover every single league or every single area. There's so much, I'm sure, as you all know, to cover. So I was just brought on to kind of fill in the youth and the high school and some junior stuff and all of that. I like to say that I'm kind of the Swiss Army knife, I guess, for the Rink Live. If
That's
there's
awesome.
something
Yeah.
that doesn't really fit one other reporter or what they're covering, then usually I just try and do that in a way. So doing that, we've been doing a ton more social media this year and just expanding kind of everything. So it's been really cool to see the website grow this past year and see a lot more people starting to recognize us or any of us out at the rink if we're wearing the Rink Live hats or shirts or any of that. It's cool to see people say hi to us and start recognizing us and reading our stuff. So it's been a really big year for us and our coverage in general.
I always tell people on the East Coast that hockey is big on the East Coast, but I said if you haven't been to the Northern Corridor, Minnesota, North Dakota, I said it
Yeah.
is the same as football in Texas. I said it is insanity up there. There's a reason they call Minnesota the state of hockey. It's not a joke. But again, it isn't a North American sport in a lot of ways. It's a global sport in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
if you were going to start the Rink Live anywhere, that would be the right place to start it. Cindy, this is my next question for you. As a woman in both hockey and broadcast journalism, just like Christy, you are a trailblazer for many people, including my son and daughter. They see you doing this and it just immediately normalizes everything. So I'd like for you to talk to the parents and especially the young players that might be listening about why it's important to follow your dreams, but also how you can have a life in the game, even if it's not playing.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that I originally was kind of worried about entering this job or in sports. I didn't really know how people were going to react. Sometimes growing up as a girl, if you're looking at comments and a clip of a hockey video or just sports in general, I feel like sometimes you can see a lot of the haters or people, not being very nice to some of the women that work in the industry. So it kind of scared me off originally a little bit. I was a little nervous about joining the job, but honestly, people have been so awesome over the past year. I feel like it was all basically people on the internet, and those aren't people that you actually hear from in real life. So sometimes I think people get originally really nervous about working in sports, especially girls, because the internet is a totally different place than real life. So I feel like that sort of maybe a little nervous, but after joining the industry and sort of just talking to everybody and making connections, that's totally not what the reality is. I feel like people have been super supportive of me and of some of my other coworkers who are women also, and have been really awesome and have treated me the same as they would treat anybody else, which is really cool to see. And yeah, that was definitely a worry of mine, but it's totally has not affected me at all, which is
Yeah.
awesome. And there's definitely a place for women in sports, 100%.
Also a credit to you because you do your homework and you do your research, so you earn that respect.
Yeah, I would say that's part of it too.
I would say that's a huge part of it. One of the topics that you did a deeper dive into, which I would love to talk to you about, is the dreaded transfer portal. Is that's
Oh,
a
yeah.
really hot topic right now in college circles. My daughter's team experienced that last semester and actually kind
Yeah.
of got bit by it. So what have you found as far as the good, the bad, the ugly with the transfer portal?
Yeah, I mean, the transfer portal was such a strange, I don't know, it's still such a strange phenomenon that's been happening. And this spring, I was really interested in the transfer portal last year when it happened, but I wasn't necessarily working as a journalist or anything. I wasn't working for the Rink Live, so I just kind of watched it happen, but I was really interested in it. So this year when it started to pick up again and we started to see players saying they were entering the transfer portal, I decided, you know what, I'm really interested in this. I want to start sort of making a database with all the information on it for me, but I think there's other people out there too that are really interested in it. So I sort of started to make this spreadsheet, and now everybody on my Twitter always comments they always need more Sydney Wolf spreadsheets because I make a lot of them with just
That's
info.
awesome.
Copyright that while you can, by the way.
Yeah, people just like seeing them. They're easy to make and they're a nice way to get information out there. But I made one on the transfer portal, and one thing about the transfer portal that makes it really hard to cover is it's not public information. So
Right.
I've never seen the transfer portal with my own eyes. I don't have access to the portal. I don't have a login where I can just see all the information. I'm pretty sure the only people that can see it, I think, are like college coaches, I think,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I can't see it. I don't have any inside info. I basically just scoured the internet every day and tried to find all the leaked information and compile it into one place because nobody else was doing that. So I just sort of saw a need that people had. They wanted to see transfer portal news. So decided to make a spreadsheet, and it blew up on Twitter. Honestly, I had maybe 200 Twitter followers before I made this transfer portal spreadsheet. And then that really just took off. And actually we're recording this today, which I'm sure this will be out in a little while, but we just put out a story on the Rink Live where I basically took all the transfer portal, the final portal, because now we know who's on what team now, who transferred, who didn't transfer, all that good stuff. And I crunched a bunch of numbers and found some patterns and some percentages, and it's a really nerdy story, but a lot of people
It's
were
a great
interested in
story.
seeing
It's
that.
fascinating. Yeah.
So yeah, we've just been doing a ton with that because people on Twitter are so interested in the transfer portal, and I have a feeling it's going to get pretty crazy again next year because of that COVID rule where players can get an extra year of
Right.
eligibility. You don't have to sit out a year now usually. I think maybe there's a couple of circumstances where you might, but transfer portal is crazy, but people love hearing about it, and it's really fun to cover, going like, oh, I wonder where this person's going to go. We'll see. And see
Yeah.
how they work out now.
Did you come away with any takeaways? I mean, did you find it damaging to a lot of teams?
I mean, honestly, I think for the most part, when I've talked to a lot of people about the transfer portal too, we think for the most part it's a good thing. You've seen this year in college hockey, especially on the men's side, but some in the women's side too, that there's been a lot of chaos and a lot of like huge upsets week after week after week this year. And it's not just like, oh, well, this is the number one seed, they're gonna beat this team no matter what. There's been a lot of upsets this year and a lot of teams splitting every single week. And I think that's because if they're like, well, our defense is not so great, our defensive core, we had a lot of players graduate or leave, they can just go out and get a player who's already played college hockey instead of bringing in a fresh like 18 to 20-year-old into their program. So a lot of these teams who maybe weren't able to compete with the bigger colleges and stuff are able to do a little bit better and address some of their needs quickly through the portal. But then that's sort of the big negative thing, is if teams recruit so much through the portal, then there's this huge backlog of freshmen usually who aren't able to come in either because of transfers or players using their fifth year, and then they have to decommit, try and find a new program, and they might not be able to. So that's been one complaint I've heard from a lot of players, is there's just a ton of backlog right now, and it's really hard to get recruited to programs because they're like, well, we can choose between you, or we can have our senior come back for another year, or we can pick up a player in the transfer portal. Right. So that's made it pretty hard on young players, but there also is quite a bit of good to the portal as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you're explaining this to parents because
it's kind of confusing.
It is very confusing, and this is, if your kid's going to be playing college hockey, this is a new dynamic that you need to recognize. It's part of it now.
Yeah.
Two things on all this. Number one is college sports in general, not just hockey, is going through a metamorphosis right now with transfer portal, COVID, and then also name, image, likeness, sponsorships availability. And just in case, I do want to do this, just in case we have some of the younger parents here, and might be going, what the hell is the transfer port? So in college sports, there is a time period where players can declare, I would like to transfer or look around. It can be very awkward because you have to tell your team that I'm looking to transfer. So you can imagine what that might do inside of a locker room if a coach knows a player is trying to leave. With that said, it can be very wishy-washy with what if another team wants a player, about what you can and cannot do during that time period. But long and the short of it is, there's a period of time in college sports you can transfer from one school to another. And it does, you're right, creates a lot of hot stove.
And you don't have to sit out a year anymore either.
Yeah. And that's the big deal. And Sydney mentioned that, right? Because of COVID, you used to have to sit a year if you transferred, which gave coaches a major upper hand of, do I really want to do this? But when you don't have to sit out a year, and again, this is not limited to just hockey, it can cause a lot of issues suddenly because they can play right away. It makes it a little more attractive to a both disgruntled player or a player who's having a really hot year and might want to go from a small college to a big college. And like I said, with name, image, and likeness, sponsorship availability, if I'm going from a small school in the Midwest, and UND wants me, that's a totally different discussion now than it was 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And you're right about the upsets. I was at the game. We were at the game when Arizona beat UND in Las Vegas, and I was shocked. It was a stadium. The entire stadium was UND.
And they have a lot of great transfers. Arizona State, that's one of those examples. They brought in a bunch of quality guys. So I think that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that pitch. Like, do you like North Dakota in February when it's minus 42, or would you like to come to where it's a nice desert?
Yeah,
and it's beautiful. But yeah, college hockey is an amazing space, Sydney. And again, I love that you're talking about this because you are filling some gaps. In hockey,
and she's done some breakthrough research. Good for you, Sydney. It's impressive.
Well, and that makes me want to ask this question too. And we kind of alluded to this. I think one of the most toxic parts of the game and hockey culture is people that disqualify people in your position due to, lack of experience. And I think it's important that we have people in the game that haven't played for that perspective, right? And more importantly, and I stand by this, right? It obviously depends on what you're reporting on and how you're reporting it.
Yeah.
But I don't think playing is a prerequisite to be a hockey person. I think passion is. And in your last talk about the transfer portal, we understand you clearly have a passion, because I'm not going to sit around making spreadsheets all day on the transfer portal. Right. So I just want you to talk to that too.
I can see Benelli doing it for fun.
No, Benelli's going to read her stuff.
Time.
That's how he does. He's going to Twitter right now. What do you think he's doing?
I just steal Sydney's stuff and get on Instat and just watch a bunch of video. That's all.
That's it. But yeah, Sydney, I wanted you to talk about that again, because look, whether you play or not, I think, like I said, passion is the prerequisite, right? And you clearly have that. So I would just like for you to talk again for a few minutes about where you discovered your passion for the game, right? And how that drove that fire in your heart to say, you know what, I want to do this with my life, because it's a decision you made to work here.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a crazy story. It's really funny whenever I go to Rinks now and people meet me in person. Usually one of the first questions they ask me is, so where did you play?
Right.
And I didn't play. I think it's fun. I'm trying to learn how to play now, but most of those mites out on the ice are way better than me right now. So I never played. It's really weird. Growing up in Minnesota, did not come from a hockey family. I didn't grow up watching hockey. None of it. Like, my parents were never really super interested in hockey. We weren't watching the Wild or anything. We were definitely more of like a watch the Vikings and football type family. I have one sibling, a brother, and he played a lot of sports, but he never played hockey. So I grew up watching a lot of, football, baseball, basketball, but just not hockey. But I went to a high school that was pretty big into hockey, St. Cloud Cathedral, and they were pretty big in hockey. But again, I was sort of just not really exposed to it. I never grew up watching the game. I didn't know much about it. I maybe went to 1 or 2 games in high school just for fun, but I don't know. I didn't know really anything about it. I was not an athletic high schooler. I was not interested in playing sports. I was super nerdy, which I think helps being a journalist, being a little bit of a nerd. But I went to college at St. Cloud State, and that was the year I think they cut the football team or something like that. And if you go to St. Cloud, nobody was really watching any other sports besides hockey. Hockey is what people want to watch at St. Cloud State. So went to a game my freshman year, didn't really know how the game worked, to be honest, but watched the game and really just sort of fell in love with it at St. Cloud State, watching the Huskies. And that was the year they were undefeated at home, I think. So it was a really great year to get into watching the Huskies. Unfortunately, they were painfully upset at the end of that season. But I really just fell in love watching St. Cloud State. And then St. Cloud, if you're from the Midwest, you probably know this, but if you're on the East Coast listening, you probably wouldn't know this, but St. Cloud has a really good media program and mass comm program. We have a ton of TV people, journalism people, kind of just all of that. So if you look around hockey, I can name so many people that I went to school with that are St. Cloud State grads. So I sort of just started doing radio, TV, journalism. I always loved writing and public speaking. So did that, and then started to really like hockey, and just kind of combined everything, and eventually ended up where I am now, became sort of a super fan, and used my writing skills and my internet investigation skills, and that sort of combined to where I am today, I guess. So weird, but
I love it.
Fun journey.
I love it, and I'll tell you why. And because I look, I'll give an example. Caitlin, our producer, is in a similar boat, right? She's been in the game for a few years, and she does so much. And anytime someone gets a little snarky, I get a little big brotherish with these things, and I go, "What have you done in the last 2 years?"
Yeah.
I'm like, Sydney Wolf has been writing daily, if not more. Caitlin Reese is going to every home game for a Flyers team that is not the Flyers.
Yeah.
and doing all these things. I said, what have you done lately? And then on top of it, again, well, I'm getting a little toxic right now, but on top of it, I'll say this too. And this, Christy, you'll love this, right? Christy went to Syracuse. I went to Montclair State for broadcasting. Mike went to the School of Hard Knocks with us. If anyone out there is wondering, majoring in broadcasting is very similar to being a professional athlete. It is a grind to be a broadcasting.
It definitely
major,
is.
right? And I'll tell you what, you have to love it. You have to love it. So anytime I see someone in the game that has gone through that and is doing the game, I just, you kind of know they get it. right? Because every broadcasting major I've seen runs like a job, right? They don't run it like
It
it's
does,
school.
yeah.
It's like if you miss the show, you are out of here. You are out of the major. Everyone I've seen. So I just wanted to nod to all the broadcasting, mass comm, journalist majors out there,
Oh yeah.
as the three of us who have gone through it. And again, Mike, you're right there with us, buddy. Being on this pod, you've been on every episode, so we're gonna make that count. But yeah, no, Sydney,
Commitment. It's a
thank
big
you for that.
commitment.
It
Right?
is.
I mean, I think Sydney, like what you're following, what you're getting now with your followers is you're gaining, the trust that
Right.
they're doing, that you're doing all the work for them, right? So they can trust that you put something out there. Okay, well, she did her research. She's upfront and honest, and she has information I can actually use. Like this is really, it's not just
Value.
your comments and commentary, but I think that, I mean, do you find that like that your passion, that when you see other people that are in the sport, like when you're in the booth or you're walking around the rink or you're having these conversations, I mean, do you feel like there's a little backlash to you sometimes? That I played hockey my whole life, and I know this. Like, what makes you the expert? Is it just because you can research the internet? Like, what makes you the expert in this field right now? What do you feel the qualities are that you're doing that other forget about broadcast journalists, just other
Yeah.
people that want to get into the sport of hockey or any sport that didn't play? Like, what are the attributes you think you bring to the table that can help people understand, how you got where you are right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've really seen anybody who's been like bad to me or anything saying, well, you didn't play, so what would you know? Everybody's been honestly really awesome and has been really fun to talk to. But I feel like just the biggest thing I've done to at least just make a name for myself in the industry. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I feel like the way that I've really gotten people's attention and brought people to my page is just sort of compiling information that nobody else wants to compile in a way, but just sort of finding
Right.
an area that you want to be sort of an expert in or something, especially if you see a need. For me, it was the transfer portal, or now I'm doing a lot of work on compiling NAL or North American Hockey League tenders, and compiling that into one place. Just sort of finding a need, seeing that nobody else might be covering that, or finding a story that nobody else might be talking about. Because in hockey, there's plenty, and there's not, unlimited reporters for hockey. So just finding something that nobody else might be talking about, nobody else might be doing work on, and just sort of going out, try covering that. And if nobody else has information on it and you do, then people want to follow you and people want to listen to you.
Yeah, so just, I mean, so and that's how I would, equate it to, like, in the hockey world, the actual coaches,
that,
right? The coaches all want to coach.
That.
They all want to coach 18U AAA.
Yeah.
Right.
They come in and go, oh, well, what would you like to do here at the organization? How much do you pay? And then I'd like to coach the 18U AAA team.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what? But I think the most successful coaches that I've worked with, the ones that get into the game, are the ones that go after the kids and the programs that nobody else wants, and they make them great. Like,
yeah, you got to start with that.
Like I'm going in and I'm taking, like, all the learn to play kids, and I'm going to make it the best learn to play program there is. And then I grow with the 10U, and then I can maybe coach a tournament team, and then I get to go in. But it seems like everybody that gets out of school or wants to get into a new role just says, well, yeah, just give me the best program, and everybody knows about it, so I'll just keep doing what they're doing. You're actually, finding a need that nobody else really. I mean, I obviously, the way to make you sound, I wouldn't want to do what you're doing. It sounds like, well, who the hell wants to do that? But all of a sudden, you find everybody needs it, right? So I think it's great that you're doing that somebody says, oh wow, look what this person's done, and now I can actually benefit from it, and just keep feeding her, like keep doing this, keep doing this, keep doing this. I think that's just, I look at the way when I work with coaches every day. Like, that's exactly the way I would describe to them. Find a need that nobody else wants, go out and get players that nobody else thinks are good enough, and then make them better and make them great, and then add value to their lives. And that's going to make you stand out, what you do in your field.
Michael,
yeah, I think that's pretty similar, at least to journalism. Yeah, that's a good comparison. I know just a lot of people who probably start off their careers in writing or broadcasting and go, oh, well, I want to work for an NHL team right now
Right.
or right away. It's like, well, that
Right.
you might not be able to do that. You gotta start doing something else, and then maybe eventually you might be able to do that. But I think that's pretty similar, where there's a lot of people who think they're going to start out like all the way at the top, but there's definitely some work you got to do before that, and some hours you got to put in.
Well, and Cindy, look, I'm going to tell you this. There's a tremendous amount of wisdom in what you just said in a lot of different facets, professional world, coaching world. Mike, I'll even bring it down to the playing level. I have conversations with players all the time about, they'll see a team and like, well, everybody on my team's a goal scorer and I need to be a goal scorer. I said, you know what? Let's take a look at your team. You don't have too many playmakers on your team. That's a gap that needs to be filled. Have you thought about working on your passing game? So for the young parents, young players out there, and old parents and old players out there, take a look at your teams and see what they're missing. I've seen a lot of players become great playmakers, and that's a gap, and they become very valuable very quickly. Not everybody needs to be Steven Stamkos, right? You need playmakers. So I think there's tremendous wisdom there overall, just about finding gaps, filling in those gaps, creating a need. Right. Look, I'm someone I was fortunate enough to get to work at the NHL level. And I'll tell you what, as I've descended that mountain to other levels and non-NHL levels, I've had a lot more fun, I think, at those levels. It's not a shot at the league. It's just, you start to really realize, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
The NHL is the kind of the beacon on the hill for a lot of people. And it is, don't get me wrong, but there's a whole mountain of stuff. Right. And it just doesn't need to be done for status. Right. And if you want to get to that point and you work hard, you can. So Cindy, with that said, it's kind of, transfer into this.
Yeah.
You've experienced a lot of hockey now and a lot of hockey events. So what are your favorite hockey events and why?
Well, I've seen so much hockey over the past year. It's kind of crazy. But obviously, as someone who was a St. Cloud State fan, I love just watching the Huskies. They're always going to be my favorite team to cheer and to root for, just as a fan. And being from Minnesota, watching the Wild, obviously that's a favorite. But Minnesota high school hockey is awesome. I mean, if you ever come to Minnesota and you're a hockey fan, you're not from here, I always tell people, I've had a couple people say, oh, well, if I come to Minnesota, what should I go watch if I want to watch hockey? I've never watched it. I'm always like, you got to go watch the Minnesota State tournament. It's just such a fun, huge experience. And you don't even have to know any of the teams or any of the players. You can go and just experience a huge arena filled with people watching great hockey games. And it's so fun. But youth games are awesome. And then this summer too, I had awesome experiences driving out to Sioux City and Madison to cover the USHL Clark Cup. That was an awesome experience to be able to watch all those games and to be on the ice after Sioux City won the Clark Cup. That was really cool to experience that and to talk to players that are emotional. They just won this huge trophy. That was really fun to watch and to see all those games. And some of those players are getting drafted now and doing well in college, which is cool to see. And I also had a favorite experience this summer. I got to watch also in Madison, the women's U18 World Championships was there. And that was super cool to see all these women from different countries competing with each other. And that was some really fun hockey. And I know the players loved it, and seeing their faces light up when they heard the whole arena chant USA and stuff like that. The USA Canada game was awesome. So I've seen a lot of really, really fun hockey this year. And I'm sure there's plenty more coming up that I'll see too, but love the Huskies, love high school. There's just so much awesome stuff to watch out there. I can't really just pick one.
It's a great
Right.
answer.
I was wondering if we could talk a little bit, if we go back to the youth hockey leagues. And it's unfortunate because I've seen some contraction of house leagues and bigger emphasis on parents wanting to latch on to those, AAA, AA teams, and not putting the value in house teams that is very deserving. I mean, have you also seen that? What have your observations been? And what can you say to help encourage parents that there truly is value in house league play for their kids?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. And I have seen that, or I've seen people that say, oh, you need to play for this team no matter what in the off season, or you're not going to do well later on. And I think just one of the cool things about hockey, one of the beautiful things about hockey is that there's so many different paths you can take. There's never a right or wrong team. So honestly, when people ask me about, oh, should I be playing for this team? Should I be playing for this team? Do I need to spend more money and go out and play for this league? It kind of just, there's no wrong path. I mean, if you talk to one team, but maybe they're not as flashy or as fancy as another team, but you think maybe they're going to be a better fit, that's not going to be, one thing that sends your career down the toilet or anything. There's so many different paths in hockey you can take, so many different teams you can play for, junior leagues you can play for. I don't really think there's ever a wrong answer for who you can play for. I've even talked to a lot of hockey players, girls and boys this fall, who've committed to Division I programs, who play different sports in the off season. They don't even play hockey all year round. So there's so many different ways you can go about playing. I just don't think people should feel pressured to have to spend more money to play for these leagues. You totally can if you want, and that's not wrong either. But there's so many different ways you can keep elevating your game. And, there's plenty of people too who say, well, I play hockey in the winter, but I play soccer in the fall, and that helps me not get too burnt out on the sport. And I think that's wise too. I've talked to a couple high school kids who say that, and they're committed to Division I programs, which is cool. So I feel like in hockey, there's just really not a wrong answer with who you can play for, because there's so many different paths you can take. I've talked to so many different players who they've all gone through a completely different process. So I think that's one of the really cool things about the sport.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you said, and my daughter this weekend, she plays college hockey, just helped to organize a Learn to Skate program for community members who are financially disadvantaged. And some of the, and I was there and watched, it was just an incredible event to see the college players encourage these kids who thought they'd never have the opportunity to play hockey. And they got tons of gear from USA Hockey, and it didn't cost them a penny. And parents were coming up, I don't think I can afford this. And I said, there are ways you can, and this team's going to help you get there. And you don't have to play for the best team that costs $6,000-7,000 a year. But the house leagues, and there are a lot of learn to skate, play hockey for free programs that your kids can get involved. So I'm glad you did mention that, because there is opportunity out there. We
And
have
I
to
think
build on that though,
Yeah, hockey is definitely expensive in a way, but if you look at it now, every sport has become really expensive too. If you want to play for these top teams that aren't for your school necessarily, if you want to be playing for these top teams, they're all pretty expensive. So if you want to go that route in any sport, you can, but there's definitely ways you don't have to do that. And there's plenty of ways to be able to play hockey and not be playing for the most expensive team with the most expensive fancy gear too. Yeah. You don't have to be doing that. You totally can. That's not a wrong option either. But yeah, there's plenty of ways for people to get involved and to get playing the sport.
I'm glad you said that.
We talk all the time, Sydney, and you said this. There is no right path. There is no path, period. Everyone takes a different route to wherever they end up in the game, whether it's adult league or the NHL. And, one of the things that I always try and talk about here is this, like, there are obviously organizations probably that you pay a lot of money for that have a lot of resources and maybe a lot of aspects to their training that look very good. And maybe they are very effective, but if the passion isn't there, it doesn't matter. Right. And I look for the kid that is skating on the ponds or at the rink all the time, just trying to get a little bit of ice time or donating time to go to the younger. I just want to take shots. I just want to be out there and taking shots with the learn to play kids. That's something that no organization is going to put into a youth athlete. And then there's just the question of athleticism, right? Are you an athlete? And every parent typically thinks their kid is, right? But the idea is that great athletes are great athletes, right? And you said it, they'll be great at every sport they play. Most professional athletes could be professional athletes at another sport. It's something that's almost never talked about, but almost every football quarterback could have been a pitcher in the MLB. You know what I mean? So I think about these things, and just to remind the parents listening, there's no path, direct path. It's just got to find what's best for you and your family, what you can afford, what your kid wants to do, making sure that you're listening to the kid, that they actually want to do this. Mike, I want you to speak about this too. I'll tell you, there's nothing more devastating to me than these two things is a kid who does not have the athletic ability that wants it more than anybody else. And then probably even worse is the kid who has the athletic ability and does not want it. And it's usually not their fault, right? It's just they've been pushed into the game for so long and they are 17. And it's like, wow, I really have some skill, but I don't want to do this anymore. That's a really tough place to be in. And I find 9 out of 10 times, it's not the kid. He's not playing for him or herself. He's playing because his parents want them to do that, or there's a lot of pressure in the area.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, one of the questions I'd really like to ask Sydney on that, kind of on that subject of, because you're in this, like Minnesota for an East Coaster, right, is the mecca of hockey. It's like, it's just, you get to be, and down here, if you're on the East Coast and say, hey, I got some guy from Toronto coming to teach my kids, and we got some guy from Minnesota coming. Like, it's like, okay, well, everybody's going to sign up obviously for that clinic, right? So I think, what I'd like to hear is, knowing that these kids are probably, they're just automatically like, well, I'm in Minnesota, I probably got to play hockey. I got to find that passion. What are some of the things you see, because you cover so many tournaments with Rink Live? Like, what do you see from the outside kids coming in? Like, when you see kids come from California and Florida, and because everybody wants to go to Minnesota for these tournaments, right? Are you finding anything like culturally that you're like, well, that's weird. Like, why would it, these kids are so different, or at the end of the day, are they all just weird haircut kids that that are all have hockey lingo all day long? I mean, what are you seeing? What are you seeing? From that perspective, only because I think to Lee's point earlier, with this whole passion and Christy talking about house league hockey, it's a lot of this because we don't have culture in a lot of other places in the country. But you do. I mean, it's built in. So what are some of the things you see from an insider's point of view when outsiders, come in to play these teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely lucky to be in Minnesota if you're a hockey player, because there's so much hockey in most of the state. I think a lot of people are surprised if they come from out of state, especially if they go up to northern Minnesota, just how much hockey is instilled in the culture there. You go drive around a neighborhood, there's probably a couple of backyard rinks. There's probably like multiple people who have them in their backyard, kids skating before school, after school, like just all the time. Kids just a lot of communities in northern Minnesota have opportunities. You can just go skate whenever you want, go have ice time whenever you want. And I know there's tons of communities that don't have that. So if they come here and they're like, oh, you can just go to this rink whenever you want and go skate for an hour, go skate for the rest of the night, play with your buddies, go play with a bunch of different hockey players that are older than you or better than you. I think that's a big thing that a lot of people think is really cool, that you can just a lot of times find ice somewhere and just go skate. But Minnesota hockey, it's just everywhere. And yeah, there's so many teams you can play for. People grow up, and we're lucky to have a lot of good teams in Minnesota too. I know sometimes if you come from more of a non-traditional hockey area, there might only be like one top tier team you can play for. So you don't really have as much of a choice when it comes to teams you get to pick from, which that totally makes things a little harder. Us Minnesotans have it a lot easier, where it's like, well, you can play for this team, this team, this team. They're all really good, so it's not going to matter. And I know a lot of people definitely don't have that option in other parts of the country, where they might be like, well, you can play for this good team, otherwise that's kind of it. So yeah, there's just hockey everywhere and all the time.
I think that's, kidding on Christy's point too, that when we're in other parts of the regions or the country, right? So I work, I get the opportunity to work with all really parts of the country and a lot of non-traditional markets. And when Christy says house league, I kind of refer it more to as like free play. Like what you just mentioned about the kids being able to just go to a rink and play, that just doesn't exist. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's hard
because it's so locked down. Like if a parent knows it's free ice, it's like, okay, let's have a clinic. Let's bring somebody in and we're gonna teach the kids how to break out. Where that free play environment where you're in is more like, that's why, Brazilian soccer players are who they are. And that's why, that's why all these other athletes are who they are, because it's just free play. There's the opportunity just to go out and find, and run with your own passion, because you have access. And I think, that's really where I look at. I was just at a full tournament this past week or two. watching, every 7-year-old, AAA elite hockey player play. And it's just like, to me, there is no freedom there. There's no, just finding the game where in a lot of, in your part of the country, and obviously something that Rink Live is probably loves, the fact that people just want to go out and watch and have all this content, because it's just so much more unstructured. And in a place where hockey is king, I think then you have just more kids in the pool, right? The bottom of the pyramid. And here it's like there's so few kids, like everybody's got to be on the elite team quicker, because there is no time to explore that opportunity. And you're talking to kids every day, right? That, I didn't play organized AAA hockey until I was, 14 years old. And now I'm on, now I'm getting drafted. It happens all the time. Like it's not an uncommon story. Yeah. It's a story you hear every day, which you don't get so much in other parts of the country.
Right.
Yeah. We're definitely spoiled in Minnesota. That's for sure.
It's funny, Mike, you're bringing this up, and Sydney, Christy, you'll love this story. My son's team was kind of awarded some free ice the other night, Mike, which, as you said, is very rare. And I kind of was the only parent that could be out there because the full team couldn't make it. So, it was a situation like someone just has to be on the ice, and I was thinking, like, do I need to run a practice here? And I said, you know what? I'm not going to make any practice plan. I'm just going to let the kids go on the ice, and we'll see what happens. And nice. I was kind of mildly shocked at what happened. So obviously it started out, they're just skating around, having fun. And then again, no instruction. I saw my son in the corner working on his goalie stuff on his own. Saw another kid working on his shot on his own. These are 7-8-year-olds. And then they started coming up to me, hey, can you show me how to take a slap shot? So they just naturally started going into this, I want to learn. And then some of the other kids just want to have fun, skate around. And then about 3/4 way through, like, can we play a game? And again, it was some Adams out there too. We played a little game. We had some fun. We made rosters that kind of made sense. It was just a great time. Everybody's had a good time. And then people were talking about it the next day. And I remember, like, it was almost like a teaching moment for me of we got to have more of this free play, where it's not as structured. And think about it, especially at the mite level, they don't want to listen to you. They want to listen to you, coach. And I thought it was weird that when I just let them do whatever they wanted to, they started teaching themselves. And some of the kids were helping the other kids. I was blown away by that. It was just a healthy reminder that we got to do some more of that, just free time so that they can think. And maybe not be, I use this term lightly, but bossed around by the coach or instructed by a parent, and just go out there and enjoy the ice.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. Yeah, it's just making sure kids don't get too burned out like too early, especially because here in Minnesota we're so spoiled. Kids can go just play freely a lot of the time, but I know obviously in a lot of other places that doesn't happen. So whenever they're on the ice, it's for a game or for practice, and that's the only thing you're doing when you're on the ice is going through those routines. And I think it's hard to sometimes be like, okay, well, you got to also like being on the ice, and hopefully try to not get too burned out and then lose your passion, because obviously kids need to always like it. If you don't like it, you're not passionate about it, then things start to not be so great. But that's a tough thing too, is just making sure things are fun for kids sometimes too.
Yeah, I was just saying, in Pennsylvania, we might get a pond once every 5 years. In Minnesota, you get a pond for 2 quarters a year every year. And it's intense. Sydney, my final question, and then Mike, Christy, I'll throw it to you if you have any more. I just want to talk about the Rink Live again. You alluded to this earlier, talked about it. I'm just curious about, their mission and why you chose to work for them, because it's a big step in your profession. I'm sure you didn't take that lightly, as you said, right? Tell us about the Rink Live, why it's awesome. And again, their mission, like their vision, what it is they're trying to create.
Yeah, so the Rink Live, like I said, we've been expanding a ton. So we're just trying to be basically the source for all like Midwest hockey news, but we have mainly a ton of college coverage, which is what made me really like the Rink Live in the first place. Before I worked for the Rink Live, I already was following them. I already read a ton of stuff from the people I work with now. I was already super interested in reading about St. Cloud State and the Gophers and Minnesota Duluth and North Dakota, and reading what's happening with all those teams, because we're kind of the main source for news on those college teams in particular. So I was already reading content from our other people, and they put out really awesome in-depth stuff, stories about the players, interviews with players and the coaches, podcasts. Like I was already listening to and reading a ton of stuff on the website, and I definitely didn't want to work for someone who I didn't like what the website had to offer or who the people were. And I didn't really know what to expect in going into like applying for the job and the interview. But in my interview, I definitely felt like everybody that worked there was really great. And again, being a woman in sports, sometimes you gotta test the water a little bit with the people you're working for. You want to make sure they're not going to be, you know, discounting you or be weird to you at all. And I didn't get that at all from those guys. They were all super awesome to me. And I think I made a great choice because the people at the Rink Live are like some of the nicest people I work with. We have a ton of fun every week when we get on like our staff calls, we're discussing ideas. Like we all just get along really well too. So I think that was a big part of it, is just working with people that you like what they write, you like what they have to offer, and they treat you nice, and we're all kind of like our own little like group of people who all really like each other and enjoy each other, and we don't have like coworker beef with each other all the time, or some companies where everybody, you know, has issues with everybody else. Like I feel like we all just get along really well, and they're all super awesome to work with. So we've just been trying to expand Midwest hockey coverage and get into all different leagues, youth, high school, juniors, pro, college, trying to get a little bit of everything. So yeah, mostly focus on the Midwest, but we're growing and growing every single day, which is really cool to see. And yeah, originally was just a reader of the website and thought I would fit in well there, and then it ended up working out pretty well.
That's fantastic. As I say, they're doing it right. They're doing it right over there. That's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on and kind of dive into it a little bit. And I was going to say, do you remember any of the interview questions they asked you? Anything stand out, or is it pretty standard?
Gosh. I think I was really nervous, to be honest. Like I think I present myself well in interviews, but I was definitely really
That's because you
nervous.
wanted it. You wanted it.
But for me, it was
Yeah.
kind of awkward too, because I always get the question of, "Oh, did you play?" And I'm always worried somebody's gonna be like, "Oh, you didn't play hockey. You don't know what you're talking about. Get out of here." But they were super good because I was like, "No, I didn't play, but
There you go.
give me a chance. Give me a
Right.
chance. I'll know what I'm talking about. I'll research everything. I do my
Yes, you
work.
did.
Don't
Yeah.
don't worry." So I definitely was a little worried about that, but it ended up all being okay.
That's the passion I was talking about, which you clearly have. Sydney, you're awesome. Mike, Christy, I want to throw it back to you. If you have any other final questions.
Yeah, just it's maybe quickly, Sydney. I know we're kind of closing it out here, but is there anything trending in youth hockey that you've picked up on?
I mean, I've sort of touched on it a little bit already, but TikTok is
Oh, the TikTok.
is
Yeah.
huge. Like we
That-
started our TikTok a couple months ago, and I think I'm mostly the one who
Follow that right
posts
now.
stuff on there, and sometimes my other coworkers, but I do a ton of TikTok posts, and just over a couple months, you can post stuff on TikTok and have no followers, no likes or anything, and you can just have random videos go viral, and kids love watching the hockey TikToks. They love seeing game highlights and goals, and it's insane. I posted a video yesterday that I didn't even think was that good of a goal that I filmed on my phone at the rink, and it already has almost 30,000 views. So
I'm
just
looking
TikTok
at this.
is,
I'm looking at it right now. This is
or
cool.
one of my coworkers would film, I think he filmed just a video of the crowd at the UND Arizona State game. Or someone did, and he uploaded it, and that got over like 100,000 views. Like it's just really random how things
Crazy.
just blow
Yeah.
up on
I'm
there.
looking at this. This is a pretty run-of-the-mill goal.
And
it's
kids
got
love to
30,000.
comment and find their teammates on their TikToks and comment, be like, "I know that guy," or like, "Nice
Oh my
goal."
God.
And like,
Yeah.
it's been really fun just seeing all the kids like interact with themselves on that TikTok, or they'll be like, "Oh, I could have scored that goal." They also love to be funny in those comments too sometimes. Or one time I said, "Is this a goal or is this a no goal?" And people will
Right.
be like, "Good goal, no goal, good goal, nope." Like they
Yeah.
love to just argue too about stuff like that.
Yes, they do.
It's
sounds
super
pretty-
funny, but TikTok is, yeah, kind of our newest big thing, because
Okay.
videos just randomly take off on there, and it's kind of wild. It's sort of its own beast.
Well, you have another follower as of 13 seconds ago.
Okay,
I
cool.
don't
Just
have
to
a
make sure.
TikTok account. I'm still on Instagram.
It's definitely
fun. It's
a
fun, Christine.
youth-centric,
Yeah.
atmosphere. A lot of kids on there, but a lot of good hockey stuff on TikTok, honestly, if you get
Yeah.
sort of a chance to deep dive on there.
It's like America's Got Talent in 15 seconds over and over again.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of fun stuff on there. Mike, anything else before I close it out?
No, I love the interview, and I Sydney would love what we were doing. I think it's I know I'm gonna download the transfer portal information today and
Yes.
start looking like I'm smarter than I am real quick.
Uh,
Where kids are going.
Do you read Wolf? You don't read Wolf? You gotta read Wolf. It's pretty.
You don't know that this person transferred and why they did that?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Well, you know who does? Wolf. No,
Yeah.
Sydney, you were fantastic, and I just want to thank you for coming on today because again, we love what you're doing. We love what the Rink Live is doing, and we love celebrating people in your position because it needs to be done more. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
So that's going to do it for this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm assuming we have some new maybe Midwest listeners on here today. So as we always say, we're not just three condescending Northeast people. We do like to hear from you. So if you want to email us, team at
I'm ripping my War Road thing right now. Come on, this is my
yeah, we're sucking up.
the way though.
If you want to email us any questions, concerns, thoughts, topics, interview people, anything, if you're new to the show or old to the show, team at ourkidsplayhockey.com. Send it into our inbox. We love it when we hear from you. And you are a lovely audience as always. And with that said, we're going to close this one out. Ourkidsplayhockey.com for all the episodes, or check out wherever you listen to podcasts. We're there too. Thanks so much for listening. For Sydney Wolf, Christy Casciano Burns, and Mike Donnelly, I'm Lee Elias. We'll see you on the next episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Take care, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.